I'll just check it's coming.
Okay, so we're going live, so stand by. Hi, everyone. I'm Carrie Cassidy from Project Camelot and very happy to be here today. So I just want to say we're having some technical difficulties and welcome Keith Hunter is with me here, and we're going to be talking about Three Eye Atlas. And I hope the attending craft and so on, which would be one called Lemon, another one called Swan, and then I believe there are 9 of our secret spacecraft actually escorting it. Now, I don't know whether they're still escorting it now that it's went behind the sun. But we do have evidence of on camera of Soho photographing it even today. And so it's coming out from the behind the sun around the 29th of October. So that's just a couple days. We'll see what happens then. Keith, why don't you give yourself a short background and then you're going to share your research with us on Three Eye Atlas, correct?
Yeah. So background wise, I'm just an independent researcher, been interested in various esoteric topics since 90s basically, from an X-Files fan. But yeah, the things that's fascinated me most are Earth energy grids. A lot of the work from Bruce Cathy in that regard. Some of the esoteric physics of like nuclear weapons, earthquakes, triggering them artificially. And I would say mainly the main topic I'm interested in is planetary alignments, which cause great destructive events from history, going back all the way to, say, the Younger Dryas period. So a lot of the work I've done, many websites, many essays on my websites about various alignments and showing you which planets trigger them at which points in time in history. And now that's tied into various like esoteric calendar systems like the Mayan long count and the Aztec calendar round and that kind of thing, and 360-day cycles. So it's kind of a combination of looking at ideal measures as relate to Earth grids and also find that the numerology or numerical values tied into those is also tied into celestial cycles. And so it's all kind of interwoven in very clever ways. So that's what most of my research is about, my Lost Stage Secrets website. I've got a YouTube channel where I do occasional videos again on that. So I mean, this particular topic here, then, this Three Eye Atlas, I suppose it's taken the world by storm and over the past few months. And I know there's been loads of different things coming out there about it, whether it's a natural object, whether it is an artificial craft. And my own view is I think it's definitely an artificial craft, and its trajectory through the solar system is artificial in the sense that it's been very carefully determine the specific pass-through, like a hyperbolic trajectory. It's not got an enclosed orbit. It's passing through the solar system. Um, it has been programmed, if you will, to approach the planets on a single kind of optimized orbit that goes through and gets close to various planets or has certain special points of closest approach. And these points of closest approach, and what I'm basically going to be showing here, they actually confirm that the object's, closest approach to the various planets is not random. They confirm a very carefully designed orbit, or rather trajectory. And also, and this is again gets the out of what I think a lot of people are interested in, because there's been so much stuff on the internet about Atlas 3i somehow being connected to solar flares, coronal mass ejections, and earthquakes, yeah? And people are putting out the view that it could be actively triggering them. So I had a bit of a deep dive into that aspect, and I went to the JPL Horizons website and looked very carefully at the distances of closest approach to the various planets, and also looked at certain databases for when CMEs, solar flares, and earthquakes have occurred, and then looked at the distance between Atlas 3i and the Earth and the Sun and other planets, and I found that there is a connection. And one of the things I'm going to show here is that if we go back over the past few months of this just this year, there is very powerful evidence, in my view, that certain earthquakes and solar flares, and also a very recent CME event that occurred 21st of October, just like 6 days ago, that they are connected to Atlas 3I. And the evidence seems to be very causal. It suggests that it actively triggered them in some way when it attained a certain special distance from the Earth, from the Sun, or even from planets like Venus. And so I think I can confirm a connection in that way, and it's to do with special ratios as well. But not only that, and this is where things get really interesting, because it seems that we can show examples of Atlas 3I triggering these events that have already occurred, it got me thinking about certain times and points of approach of Atlas 3I which are yet to be achieved, but which might also be optimum days and times for triggering other CMEs or solar flares or earthquakes. So I can tell you straight now, because we're on 27th of October, the big day everybody's talking about is the perihelion event. That is when Atlas 3I gets to the closest approach to the sun. And that's literally at 29th. It's like less than 48 hours from now. And that particular time when it does get there, but it's about 11 hours, 44 minutes universal time on 29th. That particular distance is, again, it's tied in ratio-wise in a very special way to other distances, tied into solar flares and CMEs and earthquakes that I've already analysed. And not only that, the next date of interest is the 3rd of November when it gets to its closest approach to Venus. Although it's closest approach to Venus, not the Earth, the distance between Atlas 3I and the Earth at that moment, that distance is also tied in special ways to, other earthquakes and things that have happened. So I just wanted to show you a presentation where I just laid out some of this research, because it is very intriguing that these two critical dates I've just mentioned, 29th of October and 3rd of November, um, they do genuinely look like dates when something dramatic might happen. I mean, obviously it's speculative, but nonetheless, the dates do seem to be very, very suggestive. So if I can do a screen share, do you want to, if I can do that, yeah?
Yes.
Um, so let's see now. Um, Screen share there. So do you see my screen? Yeah, you are screen sharing. You see it's
Right now we
Atlas.
see a NASA list from NASA, the
Yeah,
website now.
it's a Jet Propulsion Laboratory at top, yeah?
Yeah. You
Yeah,
should
yeah.
see
So,
what your face, I mean, you see your face in front of your graphic. So I
oh
see you
yeah.
in that way.
Yeah, yeah, I can see a little box here with both our faces on the top right. So, but you see the main page here, yeah. This is the JPL website then. This is just all the orbital data, right, from Jet Propulsion Laboratory. And let's call it Atlas 3I. They've got this code C/2025N1. That's like a different code name for it. The 3I is it's the third interstellar object that's been detected, but that's the code is this C/2025N1. So that's just the basic stuff that you get from it. And if you go into the applet, you'll see this here on the website. So this is the trajectory, this smooth line here. And this is from 27th of October. This is a screenshot I just did earlier on. So this is today. This is where Atlas 3I is. If you go back in time, when it was roughly about here, Mars was a lot closer. And when you get to move it, when it goes all the way across here and gets to where Jupiter's orbit is, Jupiter will be very close here. So it's just quite fascinating that the trajectory it's taken already, it gets it close to Mars and Jupiter. But what I did was then you can look at JPL's website and you can work out the distances of closest approach to various celestial bodies from their website. So all you do is Jet Propulsion Laboratory site, you go to their Horizons system, you put the target body in, Atlas 3I, this N1 thing, And then you could select observer location, in this case, sun. And you specify the times, and you can do it to the nearest minute, so you get extreme accuracy in it. So you can use the applet to just generally work out the approximate time, what the day is when it's going to get closest approach, and then cycle through and figure out the precise closest approach. In this case, for the sun, if you were to press generate ephemeris for this, you basically get something like this. And you'll see the highlighted line here. October 29th, 11 hours 44. And this main distance here, it's a distance AU. AU is 1 astronomical unit, and that is the mean distance between the Earth and the Sun, just a slight touch under 93 million miles. So this tells you, in this case here, this value, 1.356, this one highlighted, is less than all the values above it and all the values beneath it. It's like the minimum value. And so if you just multiply this value by 1 astronomical unit, you get the distance, right? It's about 126 million miles. And I'm going to show you basically the closest approach points, Atlas 3I, to various planets. So this one here is Mars. So this occurred on 3rd of October, right, earlier this month. And the distance there, you can see 1.0.193. That's the value you'd have got from JPL. You multiply that by 1 astronomical unit, you can see at bottom, and you get this value in yellow. So that right there, in statute miles, the distance between Atlas 3I and Mars at its closest approach. And it's quite uncanny, isn't it? It almost looks dead on 18 million miles dead on, you know. Very interesting that. But that's the distance there. And if you look here, closest approach to Jupiter, this has yet to occur, 16th of March 2026. And again, look at the sequence here, 333, 2933. So it's approximately 33.3 million miles, right? That's its closest to Jupiter. Closest to Mercury, it's 108 million miles nearly. You know, it's almost just 10,000 less than that. Very interesting, 108 sequence. So that's the closest approach to Mercury, you can see there. And this one here is the closest approach to Saturn. And this was before we even officially discovered it, 29th of May 2025. That's the distance there. And the distance you can see is about 925 million miles. So that's almost 10 times the distance between the Earth and the Sun, the mean distance. So that's quite fascinating right there. And then we've got this one here, closest approach to the Sun. So this is the one, it's just a touch over 126 million miles. That is what you're going to get about less than 48 hours from now. That's what it's going to look like. So if you just add all this together, these are the distances. So I just want to firstly draw people's attention to why do I think that the orbit is artificial? Well, let's just have a look at some of the ratios of these values, right? So just very briefly, firstly, Mercury and Mars. It got to its closest approach to Mars 3rd of October, and that was this near 18 million miles. And then when it got to Mercury, 3rd of October for Mars, and then 5 days later, 8th of October for Mercury, you've got that value there. And if you just division sum, one divided by the other, it's practically dead on a 6-to-1 ratio. And I mean, look at that exacting figure, 5.9989. It's practically dead on. The adjustments are just a few thousand feet, so a few thousand miles, sorry. And just think about the odds of that it just comes into the solar system, it gets its closest approach to Mars, you mark that distance, you go forwards 5 days, exact time when it gets closest to Mercury, and it just so happens to be 6-to-1. It's like, that's no way random chance. Here's another one, Jupiter and Saturn. Simple ratio here. You can see it's 0.03599, practically dead on 0.036. Now, obviously, 6 times 6 is 36. This is almost like the values of the Sumerian system, yeah, base 60 system. So the idealized thing, 0.036, is the fraction 9 over 250 if you did it on your calculator. So again, these are exceptionally exacting ratios, very numerically significant. And, you know, what are the odds? And the final one I'll just show you is this one here, Mercury and Jupiter. And here you get 3.24, almost dead on. which is the basic fraction 81 divided by 25. So the fact that you've got multiple planets like this paired up and its trajectory is such that to extreme accuracy, you get such basic ratios, basic values like this. That alone tells you that there's no way this is a random object just randomly coming into the solar system. Its orbit seems to have been very carefully designed, okay? With intent. It's been programmed, if you will. It's got a flight plan to make sure it gets to these distances, okay? And I'll just show you one other thing here. I haven't mentioned the Earth and Venus, but here's another one for you. Another date of great significance is the 3rd of November, 5:56 Universal Time. And you can see the yellow line here. That's where it gets to its closest approach to Venus, right? Now, I've marked two distances here. The yellow line's the closest approach to Venus, but the distance between Atlas 3I and the Earth, this red line, both of these are also significant simultaneously. And if you look here, this is what we've got. The distances from Atlas 3I to each of these two bodies, we've got them in astronomical units, and then we've got them in miles. And if we do a simple division sum here, as you can see, practically dead on this ratio, 0.288. Again, the connection here, just for simplicity, divide that by 8, and you get 0.036. And that one is the ratio for Jupiter and Saturn that I was just showing you earlier. So again, it's uncanny. The precision here, the adjustments in terms of error rates in miles are just a few thousand miles or so to make these ratios so perfect. So
Okay, so
yeah,
I want to know whether or not you've seen the shows that I did with David Sereda and Jimmy Blanchett. I tried to introduce you to them. I don't know if the connection was made because they have gone all over this as well. So I just wanted to know whether you were up to speed on what they had been talking about.
I did see a few weeks ago one. I think it was the first guy you mentioned,
David
and he
Sereda?
was he was doing that. I think he was linking these points of closest approach to religious days. Is that right?
Yes. Mhm.
Yeah, I saw some of those connections there. Um, I think that, yeah, but he also was talking about. Let me see how the words. He was talking about, was it hyperdimensional physics and
Yes.
invisible planets? And he was using the phi value 1.618 to derive intervals going up to, was it 3,600 years, the Sitchin
Right, but
Nibiru? Yeah.
yeah, so what happens is also linked with Richard C. Hoagland, who is the former NASA scientist. You know who Richard C. Hoagland is?
I know because you and me and Richard were in that thing in Ellen in 2011. We went back in
Oh,
time. That
really?
was
Oh,
yeah,
no.
15 years ago. I remember that. Yeah, well,
Wow.
15 years
Okay.
ago. Yeah,
Well,
we were
he
there.
he also
Yeah.
has been working on the hyperdimensional model of the solar system with David. So the two of them are in agreement on that model. But regardless, so I just wanted to know if you'd seen that. So you're up to speed on that, more or less. And so I wanted to see whether your coordinates are matching his did you see anything off or different?
Well, from what I gathered, I mean, the only thing I saw him was he was looking at intervals between planets. He was looking at a kind of a framework. Um, I- the whole issue of looking at the orbits of all the planets in the solar system, that's in one of my books. I looked at that in great depth, and for me, the solar system was once in a state of incredible harmony. And all of the orbital periods of all the planets and all their mean distances from the sun were all in a state of harmony. Like some of the values here, for example, 360, that was the ideal Earth orbit. And this was all circa 250 million years ago. He had Saturn's orbital period 10,800, that 108 sequence. So, Jupiter was 4320. So, my own view, definitely there was an ideal solar system, and that it's been transformed, and all the planets, just been adjusted, gone out of whack from this ideal system. There are intervals, and I mean, just from based upon what I was seeing from some of his work here, um, it reminds me of some of the things have you ever heard of something like Jason? Is it Brashears from the Archaics website? Have you ever, does that guy ring any bells with you? Mm.
Shears, yeah,
Brashears or something like
not
that.
really. Yeah, I don't really
Yeah, I know he's got
remember.
something. It reminds me of something similar
All right.
to what because he one of the things he talks about are intervals of destruction, and he tries to do it numerologically to an interval. I think it's 138 years or whatever, like he calls the Phoenix cycle. And one of the things he talks about suggests is that the object like a strange comet or some sort of celestial body, and it comes through like a different dimension every set number of years or whatever, and enters into our solar system. He's like a big simulation theory guy for everything. But my take on it, on cycles of destruction like that, is I think that we're dealing with known celestial bodies, which, when certain planetary alignments occur, they trigger exotic effects like the sun changes its color, it emits massive pulses of energy, planets develop cometary tails, and you get massive global seismic activity and things like that. And so my take on it is when planetary alignments occur, you get known planets in configurations which trigger these exotic effects. I'm not really of the view that there's something comes out of other dimensions or whatever, other celestial objects come out, temporarily come into our realm and cause these effects. I tend to suspect it's triggered effects which create planets developing cometary tails temporarily.
Okay,
And
now are
so
you aware of this alignment that's going to happen on the 19th of December? That Jimmy Blanchett had, I can give you the slide of that so you can look at it. But he saw an alignment there on the 19th, yeah, of December, that 3I Atlas will be right in the middle of an alignment conjunction between several planets. Are you aware of
I'm
that?
I know 19th is the point where it gets to its closest approach to the Earth. I think there is some kind on the applet. There is, yeah, I think I know what you're talking about. I
Okay.
did have a look at, I've had a look at some of these alignments. Um,
But go
yeah,
ahead with what,
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
I don't want to distract you. I'm just trying to
yeah,
get you on track so that people who've been hearing these other people will also
mm,
be able to relate to what you're saying.
yeah, okay, yeah. I'll proceed with this and then just show you the connection. Let me just see. So, what I was just going to show you is a few other connections here. I mentioned previously about this value of this 324. And this is a connection involves the distance between Venus and Atlas 3I at its closest approach date, 3rd of November. And then we've got the speed of light. And if you just do a simple division, you get that practically dead on 3.24. Yeah. And that's so it would be 324 seconds in this case it would take for light when it's traveling from Atlas 3I to reach Venus or thereabouts. And again, it's just another one of these connections, which tells me that there's something energetic here. When we think about light waves, we think about frequencies and whatever. And so these distances that relate Atlas 3I to various bodies, they also have speed of light connections. And the 3.24 connections I show you is from the Mercury-Jupiter one. But this is the main one I want to talk about because what I'm going to basically show people now is the connections that already exist between Atlas 3I and some solar flares, CME events, and earthquake. I'm going to give you one of each of these things because there's certain events that have occurred just over the past few months, and there appears to be a causal connection between Atlas 3I and these events. And this is where we're going to look in particular at this date here, which I said the first one to consider. It's going to make sense, but this is less than 48 hours away. So we're going to get into some discussions here. I'm just going to take about 5 minutes or so just to give people an understanding of some of the esoteric aspects of nuclear weapons. And this is from my book here, especially from the final chapter. This is The Secret Physics of Nuclear Weapons. This is where I discuss all kinds of things which are very much related. megalithic monuments, work of Nikola Tesla, covert military bases, and nuclear physics. And this in particular carries on from the work of Bruce Cathy. So I'm going to say something about nuclear weapons in particular. And just to introduce this, nuclear weapons, although most people familiar with them, yeah, you have a device which is capable of causing a massive explosion. And this is a result, usually, of you'll have some kind of material, like fissile material, like plutonium, say 239 or whatever. And you'll usually like implode the core, you'll cause a chain reaction, and the fission, there's a splitting of the atoms in a cascading way, and then it produces a massive explosion. Now, one of the interesting things about nuclear weapons is, although we've had lots of testing going on since 1945, um, the thing about it, a lot of the testing that's been done, right? Yes, the nuclear bomb, if you place it wherever you place it and detonate it, it will produce a big bang. But what most people don't realize is the literal proximity of the ground positions of the various celestial bodies, like the sun, the moon, or whatever you, the positions of the celestial bodies in the sky mapped onto the Earth relative to where your device is affects the yields. And they use special separation distances between where their bomb is when they blow it up and where celestial bodies are. And I'm going to give you just one example to really illustrate this. I've mentioned this before, Kenny, but this
Yes.
is a good example here. These are databases then from nuclear tests of the United States. And we've got two here that I'm highlighting. One is shot King. It's King from the Ivy series, and then Bravo from the Castle series. Now, King was a device that was triggered 1952, 15th of November. And we've got the precise coordinates of it here, latitude and longitude, and kilotons. So it's 500 kilotons, yeah? Highest yield pure fission device on record ever, tested by the United States. And then you've got Bravo, which is 15,000 kilotons or 15 megatons. That is the highest yield device ever tested by the United States. And that was in 1954, the biggest one on record. And so I just wanted to draw your attention to a few little relations here. Okay. You can work out, if you know the exact time, and we do here, you can work out astronomical software, the latitude, longitude position of, say, the sun mapped onto the Earth. So what that means is, if you look at this diagram here, okay, if we look at the solar system, right, at the precise time when the King device was detonated, we've got the latitude, longitude of the bomb, right, which is this red point here, okay, and we've got the coordinates for that from the archives. You can use the US Naval Observatory's own software, and think of it this way. If you freeze the Earth's rotation on its axis and freeze time, right, when the device was activated, and draw a straight line from the center of the sun all the way to the center of the Earth. That line pierces through the surface of the Earth, which is what this line here represents. And you have your latitude, longitude coordinates of the sun, which is what I call the sun ground position. You can then use a great circle arc calculator to work out the separation distance of them. And that's what this value is in the orange little boxes here. This is in feet, okay? So this value is about 13.4 million feet for accuracy. Okay, but it's a few thousand miles, but that's the distance here. So that's what you get for King. Now, that's 1952, right? The same for Bravo, 1954. You've got the bomb location there from the coordinates, and you've got the sun ground position worked out as follows with those coordinates. And then you've got this this is the Great Circle Arc directly connecting them over this curved distance. And again, it's this 35.8 million feet, but it's all very accurate. So if you just look at them together, you get this. And all I want to just draw attention to is what happens when you do a simple division of one value by the other, the Bravo arc by the King arc. And the answer you get is that 2.6666 recurring, which is practically dead on the fraction 8 divided by 3. And the error rate is 206 feet. It's literally that accurate. And so again, you're going to think, well, that's amazing. Is that just a chance? No. You see, wavelengths, when we think about these distances, these great circle arcs, they're not just arbitrary distances. You've got to think about it like a wavelength, a frequency. And so what they did with respect to King, they had this arc in 1952, this 13.4 million feet, and they just said to themselves, okay, if we divide this by 3, we will get a wavelength unit fits in 3 times, okay, into King. You then say, let's multiply it by 8, and then we derive this other value, this 35.8 million feet. And what they did then, 1954, the US military, they set up their device where it was going to detonate Bravo, and they literally waited for the Earth to rotate around correctly so the coordinates where Bravo was. You see, when the Earth's rotating, the sun is moving over the surface of the Earth, yeah? And they had to wait with split-second timing until that value, that 35.8 million feet, was achieved. And then they triggered the device because they were working with this fundamental wavelength unit that they knew was conducive to boosting the yield. And that wavelength unit they knew was the King arc length divided by 3, which is exactly identical to the Bravo arc length divided by 8. And that's where you get this 8/3. So when you see ratios like this, and you see an energetic event like a nuclear bomb, and you see, well, if we're on one time period, 1952, and we do this, we're using one arc length, and then you think, well, if I divide it by one basic number, and then multiply by another one, you get another arc length, and then it's the future date, you think, yeah, if we use that as a separation distance, that'll be conducive to triggering another energetic effect. And that's part of the secret physics of nuclear weapons. And this directly ties in to the physics that links Atlas 3I to various coronal mass ejections, solar flares, and earthquakes. So let me just show you the first
Okay.
connection.
So to
Yeah.
kind of encapsulate that, you're
Yeah.
trying to say that the solar mass ejections, which I actually think are manually triggered, but that doesn't change your, you know, equation. So what we're talking about is regardless of whether it's human, it's ET, it's being shot at it, or somehow triggered by it, you see all these relationships. So one of them is going to be more correct than the others, obviously, in which direction it's coming from. But the bottom line being that this is being utilizing, as you're saying, to an amplification, a time that's most apropos for these collisions or connections to happen, right?
Yeah, yeah. The thing is, it's like when I was giving the examples of Bravo and King, they were waiting, the US military, for certain
Right,
critical distances of separation, separating the bomb to the sun, because those distances, harmonically, if you divide them by a whole number, yeah, you get intervals which obviously fit inside it. And they knew that certain intervals, which are wavelength measures, are conducive energetically, playing out over the surface of the Earth, connecting up the bomb to the sun. They knew they were, conducive to boosting the yields of the devices. And so when you then transplant that effectively to the celestial realm, you look
right,
at the distance between, say, Atlas 3I and various celestial bodies, and you say, if it gets to certain distances from them,
right.
those distances can be treated the same way as like the Bravo King arcs. You can divide them by certain values, and you're dealing with fundamental wavelength units, which are conducive to triggering via resonance, you know,
Right.
effects like, CMEs and solar flares and whatever, yeah? So,
Exactly. Now,
yeah.
there's also an aspect of this that I guess it was Jimmy that was investigating because he's an expert on radio waves. So he was saying, and it seemed as it though it's positioning itself and going this trajectory with exactly those, distances because the radio waves could be more direct. So it could, in fact, communicate directly with those various planets as it was cruising by once it got into that, you know, that bandwidth, if you will.
It is. I mean, this presentation I'm doing, Ken, is a kind of a briefish one just on certain critical points, but there's other aspects to this, other research I've done, which is, and I would think it's maybe too complicated to explain, but It is to do with the fact that I think Atlas 3i is actively beaming out energy waves. I don't think they're of the electromagnetic spectrum. I suspect scalar waves, and that they are of certain frequencies with certain wavelengths, and that it is effectively scanning or probing or pinging, if you will, various bodies as it gets close to them, as it gets to certain set distances from them. It is scanning them, but it's doing so through resonance, which is excitation. Okay. So I do think that that's what's going on. That is what I think is triggering some of these effects.
But what is the purpose of, doing that? In other words, my idea was that it's the purpose would be communication, direct communication with those particular planets. Now, when you just say resonating or it's scanning, it's like, why would it need to scan those planets? What would be the purpose?
Well, I agree with you about the one about communications. I do think, I mean, my take on it is I think you can agitate in a controlled way celestial bodies in order to cause them to communicate with other celestial bodies at vast distances. You know what I mean? Faster than the speed of light. I do think that there's an interaction possible there through resonance.
Right.
Um, I do think that's part of it, but I could also say that just scanning them is it's a scientific experiment. You know, like you stimulate something just to see the response in the most basic way. I mean, we do that, all the time, don't we? We're doing experiments. We don't know what's going to happen. So we prod something, you
Right.
know, you could look at it in the most basic way like that. But I think it's controlled stimulation, and I think it's nearly in probe,
Okay.
and I think it is in some ways scanning the planets to gather data and to be transmitted to whoever's sent the probe, basically.
Well, it's kind
Now,
of interesting. I mean, because you still have to focus on like this in theory. Now, I don't know whether you follow where it came from. So some people think it came from deep space. Others, I think it came maybe from the Sagittarius galaxy. In other words, it took many years to get to where it is now positioned. So it's completely believable that it's also generated, it's run by AI, okay? Mechanics and AI, and that it was sent out. You're calling it a probe, I call it a craft, but it doesn't matter what you call it. It's doing these certain things. But then you have to figure out why and why was it set to do these things and to do them in such an obvious way. There are many UFOs that come and go from our planet constantly all day long, and those are documented and filmed, in fact, and our secret space deals with them. But most of them blink in and out, and you can't follow them in a nice, even trajectory. I call this as almost like a train track, going through our galaxy, our solar system, I mean. And so it's trackable. We can predict the next place it's going to go along this trajectory because it's, again, like a train on a track. The track's already been built, it's following that trail. Okay, for some reason, it was chosen ahead of time, that path. They're not choosing it today or tomorrow. In other words, with going into an unknown space, they're going exactly where they plan to go. And this was planned years in advance. Yeah?
yeah, I'd agree with all of that. I mean, all those points, they're crucial to really ponder just to get a big picture of it because it's like you're right in the saying there are people who've tracked the trajectory back. Obviously, they've figured out the hyperbolic trajectory and they
Right.
say, okay,
Yeah.
where was it going back? And you're right, they're talking about going to, I think it's Sagittarius and even 9 degrees from that wow signal thing, which occurred in 77. Now, the interesting thing about it is this, and you're right, Kelly, I mean, you and me, we're into UFOs. We know these objects can appear out of nowhere and the communication is like, quote, instantaneous between different star systems. But when you look at this object, then you're thinking to yourself, how exactly did it get in here? Now, conventionally, all these conventional scientists are saying it must have been drifting for literally millions, if not maybe billions of years, like randomly just going along, and
No,
just suddenly
that's
came into
insane.
exactly. It's absolute nonsense. Just from what I've already presented here about these closest approach distances and the ratios, my personal view is it went something like this. Um, it is a probe. It traveled from, say, another star system Don't know how far away, but could have been anywhere. And it arrived in the vicinity of our solar system, somewhere at the periphery, or the outer edge of it, near instantaneous, right? It
Right.
then must have done an initial scan of the entire planets, maneuvered itself into position, and then set itself going on this hyperbolic trajectory, this very precise trajectory. Now, this pattern and this movement, as it comes in, this obviously tells you that this is a mission where this object is going to be coming into the solar system and passing through it on a time period of at least decades, several decades. Now, if you think about this from a viewpoint of, say, a UFO, coming in from some other star system, it could like flash into our solar system, go straight towards one of our planets, do a scan, pop to other planet, do a scan. It could do it like that and it's gone, right? But
Right.
this one here, it's into our solar system and it's seemingly on a, dare I say, pedestrian track, and it's going to be for decades. So the question is why? And the answer is blindingly obvious when you think about it. It is a long-term study of our planet. It's not just get some data and go. It's actively monitor our solar system over a period of several decades, like a scientific study. It's monitoring our system for subtle changes in energy states of the various planets and also the sun. And I think that's why it's deliberately in our solar system for several decades. That's why I also think it's an unmanned probe in that respect, you know.
But
But that's
it
the
doesn't seem, now let me back you up because the date that we were told they became aware of it was July 1st of 2025. But we know that it started back, as you said, and I have a
decades ago, yeah.
graphic on here where it's supposed to be closest to Earth according to the sky, which you're using the same software. And so the idea being is that it's not decades, actually. It's only from when it got into our solar system, I'm saying. It didn't cross over into, I think, where it was closest to was Saturn, the first planet it came closest to, or what about Uranus, or what's the edge of our the planet nine, they call it. In other words, it's actually going through, it's a 2.5 year period. It's not decades. So what do you say to that?
I would say you're right. We've only just discovered it a few months ago, quite literally. But I suspect that it did appear in our solar, or I should say, on the edge of our system, way, way back. You mentioned Uranus. It gets to its closest approach to Uranus, 1st of April 2027. And there's certain ratios associated with that one as well, which is why I
That's
personally
when
do
it's
not.
actually on the way out,
Yeah.
then. That's the
Yeah, yeah,
outermost.
yeah. But so I mean, but as I said, my take on it is, it all depends upon what else is in the solar system going back. If there are other planets that maybe we even haven't figured out that might be on the order of several hundred astronomical units or a few thousand out, in which case it may well be. I mean, if it were responsible for that wow signal, for example, I think did they say that that was somehow 600 AU out? Something I can't remember off the top of my head, but they were theorizing about if it wasn't from some massive place out, if it was something closer to us as a signal, you know. But if it was responsible for that signal, obviously that was from 1977. But I suspect it's probably been now at solar system maybe 10 years at least. But I'm guessing. I am very speculative on that. You're right.
Okay,
We only
in our
discovered it.
solar system, meaning where was it? Because again, as far as we know, and look, it's perfectly possible for it to jump. Okay, that's actually, I'm
Oh yeah.
surprised that it's not jumping in essence. But if it was going to get to a certain point, it would jump first to that exact point. I don't know if we know, any of us, where that exact point that it first came closest to the barriers of our solar system.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, I see what you're saying. I don't either. I don't either. This is why
All
I
right.
speculate, but I think I mean, obviously, if you look at, say, Pluto's 40 astronomical units out,
Right.
um, they talk about, is it the Kuiper Belt? What is that? Is it about 20,000 AU? Something like that? I mean, that's way, way, way out. Um, then we've got people speculating on like a ninth planet. I've had some values say 1,500 astronomical units out, things like that. So it is all a question of what exactly was its, when it arrived in our star system, what distance was it from the sun? It's very speculative. My guess is it was probably maybe a few hundred AU out there, maybe over 1,000 or so. But I suspect it might well have been here for about 10 years, maybe something like that. And I suspect it'll probably be continuing on its way for, again, I suspect maybe 10 years from now. But you're right, it'll be interesting if, and again, it's one of those things where time will tell. If we did get to a point maybe 10 years from now, if our astronomers just suddenly declared, we can't find it anymore. It's just disappeared. Like we'll be thinking, has it literally gone hyperspace? Is it gone, if you know what I mean? Or are they just like saying that we can't see it, it's too dim or something? But you know what I mean? It's one of them things where even I wonder about it. But because of the way in which I've looked at it in terms of its closest approach to the various planets, it has certain ratios that are built into its orbit that it has to achieve. This is why, and again, I mentioned Uranus. It's 1st of April 2027 when it gets to its closest approach to Uranus. Obviously that's a couple of years away. But there's certain ratio connections between that distance, some that I've already mentioned, which makes me think it is not going to dramatically change course. It'll continue on this hyperbolic trajectory, I think pretty
Right.
much unaltered until it gets to a point where maybe its mission is over and then it leaves. But I do think it's in our system for several years though, because I think it's actively monitoring our system
Yes. I
over
mean,
a
I
certain length
think
of time.
I think that's a
Yeah.
no-brainer, and
Yeah.
it's obvious. But you see, again, why is it obvious? Why it could do that. It could do that exact thing, but it doesn't need to be so obvious. And so this is the question, because again, based on our experience with UFOs coming and going from our system, with a blink of an eye, literally. So they're going, and I'm not expert in this. I'm just, you can weigh in. So I'm saying, they blink in and blink out, in essence. They go in through a dimension, the dimension. In fact, the chemtrails are all about a shield so that it will highlight the incoming and outgoing craft over our the United States and our planet. This is what the secret space program is tracking. So they know, in theory, according to my whistleblowers, the good guys and the bad guys. They can tell instantaneously who's on the trip on the ships, how they're being powered, et cetera, et cetera. This is what I've been told, okay, by very high up whistleblowers. So when you're looking at that kind of a trajectory, what I was sort of trying to make the point back in the day when I was talking to David is that why again is it doing this in such an obvious fashion when it could have done it so much more surreptitiously, if you will? And you don't have to answer me right
Hmm.
away, because there's another couple of questions that I also want you to touch on, which is, look, we know there was a CME that came from the sun. This was the story anyway. It came from the sun and hit square on 3I Atlas. This was a week or two or three ago. And it absolutely, according to scientists that I'm on the news group with Richard C. Hoagland, they said it basically absorbed the energy of the CME. It was not thrown off its path by it. It was not demolished by it. It simply absorbed it. And we do know that craft do go by the sun to refuel. Now, so if it has that sophistication, there are reasons why it's doing what it's doing. And now recently, like a couple of days ago, I think it was the 25th, it was said to be sending a pulse back at the sun. So something coming from it to the sun. Now, we don't know how correct that is, might be hypothetical, but just take that group of information I've just talked about and tell me where you're coming from on that.
Well, yeah, the part of my presentation to look at that CME event that occurred 21st of October, just 6 days ago. I've got slides for that very one. And I do think that, yes, Atlas TI stimulated the sun. It was involved in triggering the actual CME event, even though it's directed at itself. I think the same was true with the Carrington event in 1859. I looked, that was triggered by a planetary alignment, series of planetary alignments involving like Saturn, I think Mars, Mercury, and the Sun. or Saturn, Mars, Venus, the sun, and then it was Earth, Mercury, sun. And the CME event went direct towards us. Because there were two conjunctions a part of it. And so it's like the CME event was directed towards one line, one part of the conjunction pairing. And so I do think that, yes, you can get, when you get these triggers which cause CME events, they can be directed at planets, or in this case, Atlas 3I, which I think were instrumental in causing them. And there was a conjunction involving the Earth, the Sun, and Atlas 3I. They were lined up on 21st of October. So that, again, the fact that you get the stimulation event coming at Atlas 3I being a part of causing it, it very much fits with what happened with the Carrington event in 1859. But I want to show you the solar flares and then the CME thing, yeah?
Okay.
Yeah, so what I want to show you then is the connection between Atlas 3I and solar flare. Now, solar flare is a bit different from a CME. A solar flare is you have like a bright burst of light off the sun. And so it's obviously traveling at the speed of light, like X-rays, an intense flash. A CME event, coronal mass ejection, is where you have a big measure of material, like mass, blasted off the surface of the sun. So it's like protons, or electrons or whatever. It's like a magnetized lump of material that can be many, tonnage wise, if you want to put it that way. And that material travels a lot slower. So whereas a solar flare flash will take 8 minutes to go from the sun to the Earth, traveling at the speed of light, a CME, the material from that might take several days to go from the sun to the Earth. But this here, what you're looking at on the screen then, is from spaceweatherlive.com site, the top 50 solar flares of 2025. And one of them I've highlighted here, this 1.9, highlighting this blue box. And you've got the date of it, 19th of June this year. And then you've got three columns, start, maximum, and end. Now, when we're monitoring the sun, we can get, if you've got a solar flare starting, you can detect some like initial, if you will, precursor activity going on when it starts up, and then it reaches a maximum, and then that's the big flash. So in this case, the activity starts 23 hours, 37 minutes, 13 minutes later, big flash at the maximum. But I'm interested in the initial activity starting here, okay? Now, because we've got this precise time here, we can go to JPL and figure out the distance, right, from Atlas 3I to, well, anybody in the solar system at that particular time. And in this case, what you've got here, so there's the time, 19th of June, 23:37. And then we've got the distance between Atlas 3I and the sun, okay? And you can see the value in AU, it's 4.88, okay? So if you multiply that, 4.88 AU, by this value here, which is 1 astronomical unit, just under 93 million miles, but that's the precise answer, you get this very precise answer in red, okay? So this is about 453.9 million miles. And these are all high precision figures, I'm not approximating, I'm getting them as accurate as possible. So this is the value you get in miles. So that there is the distance. If we go to the next slide here.
Okay, I want to make sure your slides are showing up because they're
Yeah.
not showing up on my screen here yet. So hold on a second. Maybe it's because I don't have that. Okay, yeah. So let me see,
Yeah.
because yeah, because I had put on a trajectory slide that was from David, but now it switched over to yours. Okay, so go ahead.
So what we've got then basically, just on the JPL thing, when that solar flare was showing then, the solar flare occurred 19th of June 2025, 23 hours 37 universal time, yeah? Looking at JPL then, this value here, 4.359, this is the precise value in miles separating Atlas 3I from the sun to a precision of 1 minute, yeah? When that X 1.9 flare occurred, yeah? 2 days from now, we're going to get Atlas 3I get to its closest approach to the sun. And in this case, according to JPL, this will occur 11 minutes 44, it'll say 11 hours 44 minutes And this distance here, this 126 million mile distance here, that's the closest approach, Atlas to the sun, as will be achieved about 2 days from now. So here is the connection. A simple ratio between these two values here. If we divide the value for Atlas to the sun by the closest approach between Atlas and the sun 2 days from now, the answer is practically dead on 3.6. And the precision, 2,300 miles in error if you were to adjust the distance from the sun to Atlas 3I. So what I'm trying to say is when I see this, I think of the Bravo and the King kind of example, you know? It's like when that solar flare occurred and you had this 453.9 million distance from the sun, they think, you know, see the ratio 3.6, if you want to do this on your calculator, it's 18 divided by 5, okay? If you just do the, I think my thing is too slow here. Yeah. If you were to do it on your, 18 divided by 5, you get 3.6. So what that means is as if Atlas 3I caused this solar flare thing, right? It gets to this certain distance from the sun, 453.9 million miles or so. And they know that as a wavelength unit, very important. They think, okay, if we divide that by 18, okay, we get a unit wavelength that will obviously fit in 18 times. And then they think to themselves, if we then multiply it by 5, the answer we will then get is this 126 million mile distance. Now that is a value, a separation distance between Atlas 3I and the sun, yet to be achieved. It will be achieved in 2 days though. And the ratio between these two values is 3.6. So just like when we're looking at the ratio between Bravo and King, you know, the 8/3 ratio, it makes me think energetically that when you get to that closest approach to the sun, the Atlas 3I is in this prime, it's an energetic configuration that would allow them to stimulate the sun to trigger another solar flare, if you will, right? That's the connection here. The mathematics is high precision, you know, using the JPL's own data and its
Okay,
solar
so
flare data.
let's question, why would they want to trigger a solar flare? Isn't that even, I mean, obviously they dealt with it before when they were much further away, but now they're very close. So would it be to their advantage? That's the question, to trigger a solar flare. And would the solar flare go away from them? You know, in other words, they're not going to be impacted by it, but the Earth might, or something like that. In other words, what's the purpose?
Uh, uh, Trying to get into the minds of these aliens and what kind of aliens are they? Why are they
Well,
doing it? You
no,
know, that's like the
no,
million
but
dollar question, isn't it?
you can know a person
Yeah,
by their actions. This is an action. Okay. So they're taking,
yeah,
you're saying a potential action. It hasn't happened yet, but
yeah,
based on your model having to do with nuclear, you know, expanding
yeah.
nuclear and triggering nukes and all of that, there's an apropos, a perfect time to do certain things. So if they want to do that, what is the purpose for them doing that? We don't have to know what kind of aliens they are in order
Mm,
to conjecture
yeah. Well,
why choose that. Would that be, are they using it as a weapon? Is it going to hit us or not? Do you know that?
my speculative answers to those questions are I think this is a probe that is unmanned, and that all these actions, as strange as they may seem, it's one gigantic scientific experiment of scanning. Yes, the scan produces energetic effects which to us may be dangerous, but I think this is a strangely impersonal thing in a way. And I think that they are probing the planets, testing energy outputs from an energy input that they give, recording the data, doing a longitudinal kind of, a study that's taking years, being in our solar system, testing the planets at various times, monitoring them.
Okay,
And
so
that's
let's
what I would
back.
say.
I appreciate that. But let's say that they know the effect they're going to have. if they made a
mm,
plan and the plan was to go by the sun and to hit that angle at such a
mm,
way at a certain timing that it would then create a solar flare, then it would also be aimed in theory, and they would know, then they would look to see the effect
mm,
on the planet, whether we would consider that an act, aggressive act, or whether it would just be benign or so and so. In other words, they had to, if you're going to do something, then you have to plan ahead as to how the effect is going to affect the thing you're going to
mm.
hit with it, right? So it's not necessarily benign, that idea.
No, I don't mean it. I mean, as I said, to me, it almost seems an impersonal probe, but I get what you're saying, and you
Well,
do
do you
wonder.
poke a tiger? I mean,
Yeah.
what's the, where are we,
Mm,
where's that at? And are these intelligent beings? Because they appear to be very intelligent, very purposeful in some form or fashion. And even if it's an AI, then it's got a thinking mind and it's from whatever configuration you want to go from
mm,
there. In other words, it's doing an experiment on us, but it's doing it so that we can see it doing it. You see what I'm saying? And when you do that, if you go towards a tiger and with a stick and you hold it in a threatening manner to hit it in a which way, you're not petting it. You're not calling it from a
mm,
distance. You're actually in its face, so to speak. So it's chosen certain actions. It's not just doing a benign experiment, is my point. It's actually made itself center stage in the experiment, which is, it takes away from it being completely uh, impartial, right? Suddenly,
mm.
if I'm going to do something with you, if I hide myself and do it, then you don't know who I am or what I am, or, you can't even retaliate in theory if I was hidden. But if I'm here and I do something to you and then it's obvious that it's me doing it, it's obvious that it's an entity doing it, then you're in the experiment. Okay, I'm in the experiment. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah. In terms of, well, let me put it this way. I mean, if its intent is to trigger something harmful, that would, like say, a CME event that would be programmed in such a way to be Earth directed, or if its intent is to trigger some massive seismic activities on the Earth, um, then I don't think there's anything we can do about it. And on the earthquake thing, I'm going to give you an example of that as well. So I do think it's already been responsible for triggering earthquakes. And again, I don't think we can do anything about it. Um,
Okay, well, I want to show you something which is a recent image. Now, whether this is a correct image or not, because we have a lot of fake photographs out there. But in theory, this was a fairly recent Japanese release of a vessel. Okay, this is in theory 3I Atlas. Had you seen this image?
how do I view it?
Oh, I'm showing it on my screen. So you have to stop sharing your screen in
All
order to
right,
see the
okay,
sharing of my screen, I think. Try that.
all right.
You know how to stop your sharing. It's a red button at the near the top of the image you're sharing.
Uh, oh, I see. Yeah. Oh, I see. Yeah. Let's have a look.
So this is according to, it was on X and I think it also came through on the Richard C. Hoagland material. So this is supposedly from Japan that is not as locked down as we are with our information blackout here in the US, and probably you have a blackout over there in the UK as well. Have you seen these pictures? And this is in essence possibly the craft.
Yeah, I think I've seen the one on the left there. Yeah, I've seen that. Where did these come from exactly? I mean, is this some
Well, it
amateur
says I
telescope
know
guy
about
or?
as much as you do. Okay. It just
Oh,
says
okay.
Japanese, the Japanese leaked these images. And it was only, it wasn't that long ago.
Mm,
It was just
mm,
maybe a week ago or so. So just because we're talking about an entity that is visible to us and
mm,
knows it's visible to us, this is where, I appreciate your calculation. I appreciate everything you're doing, but I'm just wondering if you're factoring in the fact that this entity is visible to us. And therefore, if you knew about our secret space program, which I'm assuming you do, but maybe a lot of viewers, some won't, you would know that we could act against it. And in fact, the first CME that hit it, there are indications that was actually an effort to destroy it. That failed, by the
Hmm.
way.
Oh, well, that's interesting. Oh,
It's just this,
yeah.
this is just obviously we're not going to reach a conclusion here, but I was curious what, with your, because they're definitely utilizing these energies and these angles
Hmm.
of energetic connection. And I haven't found Jimmy Blanchett Chet's image to show you yet, but he is saying there's this configuration around the 19th of December that talk about utilizing energy because of the conjunction. I think, I don't remember the planets involved, but I think Earth is involved, possibly Venus, Mars, the moon, and whatever. And I don't know, maybe the sun as well. There's a conjunction that's going on. You can look it up astrologically. I know you're very good at that. And you'll see it's around the 19th of December, which is not far away. And when
Yeah.
it's going to be right in the middle of that conjunction. And the chances of that are pretty astronomical that it would be an accident. So therefore, it wanted to be there. When it's there, it has potential to utilize the energetics of a conjunction, a planetary conjunction, that could have remarkable effect on our entire solar system, perhaps.
Yeah. If you want, I'll just do a screen share again. I've just got the app lit up and I can show people what
All
this
right.
conjunction is you're talking about, in fact. Let's have a look.
So I stopped sharing, so you can go
Yeah,
ahead.
you stop sharing and I'll put the let's see now, where is it? Share as background. Share. Right. See. Did you see my screen now? Yeah.
Yes.
Right. So this is the applet thing. It's not happening, is it? Oh, there we go. So if you people look down in the bottom corner, it says 2025, 19th of December, and you can do this here. So the conjunction in question is Mars, Venus, and Mercury. You can see that there. The Earth's there. The Earth's not in an alignment as
All right.
such, but that there, that distance between Atlas 3I and the Earth, that's the closest approach distance, right? So the connection, as I said, 19th December, closest approach distance, because the Atlas 3I goes further away faster there. And if you just go, say, one step forward there, the Earth just almost, perpendicular, it's perpendicular, so it's going there. But yeah, so I think that must be the alignment they're talking about. No, Jupiter's not in it. It's just these three bodies here. In terms of doing an analysis of that, well, you can actually look at look, Saturn's there, so Saturn's not involved in anything. Uranus, no, no, Uranus is not involved in anything. Neptune, no. It's just these three bodies here. But yeah, I see what you're saying. 19th, at the same time as we get the closest approach Atlas 3I to the Earth, there is them three bodies there, yeah. Um, hmm. Atlas 3I is not involved in alignment. I was actually quite intrigued by the distance. I was doing analysis of it. There is a certain time period. I think it's next year. When you get to a point here, I was wondering if you look here, for example, you get to a point where it's almost with Mercury, but I was wondering if it might be significant at some point between the Sun, the Earth, and Atlas 3I being in line. Because this CME event that we've just had, it was basically Earth, Sun, Atlas 3I. This date here, 23rd of January, is where we get a conjunction, but it's Sun, Earth, Atlas 3I. So the Earth's in the middle rather than the Sun being in the middle. But yeah, I mean,
Okay. And like if I show my screen, I found this particular
Yeah. Can we just stop
image that
sharing this one?
Jimmy.
Yeah.
So if you stop sharing
I'll
your
stop sharing
screen
that
at
one.
the
Yeah.
moment, then I can show you his image, which he says on December 19th, he shows some kind of connection here that he's saying in a very rare conjunction, he's saying exactly during the 3I Atlas closest approach to Earth. That's how he termed it. Can you see the image I just put on the screen?
Yeah, I'm looking at it. Yeah, yeah. So what? Time span ratio 29, 8 years. Just pointing to a conjunction occurring at 21st of December 2033. Mm,
Yeah, that's going forward.
13.
But the
Also,
question is, if
yeah.
you just look at the idea of conjunctions happening at the same time that 3I Atlas is in proximity or in a certain angle to these planets in conjunction, does that give them, or the craft itself, could it have an impact in being placed in the center of a conjunction, for example? Just
Obviously,
hypothetically.
yeah, hypothetically, yes, definitely. Conjunctions are crucial in terms of major energetic stimulation of the solar system. Um, that's one of the major things, especially like four body alignments. And there's certain directions in the sky which are quite dangerous, like line up with the Pleiades or the galactic center, for example. Um,
Right.
some of them in the center of near Aries. There's a few directions in the sky when you get alignments, which can trigger massive global upheaval.
I mean, so
Um,
wouldn't these be things that, for example, if you're trying to defend Earth, against any kind
mm,
of cataclysmic happening, maybe you would be particularly alert on these particular dates, right?
yes, absolutely. And the thing about it is, there's a few dates of special conjunctions that up and coming that really do worry me. I've got slideshows and all kinds of stuff with that. There's 2030, 2037, and
Uh-huh.
2046. There
I
are
see.
alignment patterns on at certain dates in those years that I think are very, very uh, special and could mean global upheaval. Um, so I'm very familiar. This is one of the things I almost thought about, that this probe, this Atlas CI, might be in our solar system because it's wanted to be in here for several years because it's wanted to monitor it because we may well be having some of these special alignments, and it wants to be on hand to monitor the disruptive effects. That's definitely crossed my mind.
Okay,
Um,
now on this chart, if you go back in time, December 21st, 2012, that was a big day, supposedly on the Mayan calendar and all that. Some people say something happened, some people say nothing happened. I actually was in Egypt on that date, and we had some very interesting sort of psychic occurrences happening. And there seems to have been maybe a shift of some kind happen in terms of consciousness and maybe the relationship of humanity to the greater whole, the galactics, what are called the guardian races in the Ashanadin books, for example, said to be that date, December 21st, 2012. That was a big marker, right?
okay, I've got a massive presentation on the entire long count calendar, and I'm going to tell you, I
Yes.
understand exactly what that date's about, but it is in fact wrong. It's to
All
do
right.
with the fact that the Mayans basically, around about 2,800 years ago at minimum, forgot how to use their calendar systems correctly. They failed to make certain adjustments necessary to keep them going, and that's why they got locked into just counting back-ton units, which is a unit 144,000 days, one after the other, and they got locked into it. I've got an entire presentation that took me 4 hours to go through. I don't want to do it that way because I'm still thinking about doing audio for me send. I've got all slides, but
Okay, well, I'm just using
mm,
that as a jumping off
I know
point,
what you mean. Yeah, yeah.
actually, to look
But
at
yeah,
where now we're following, at least according to this chart,
yeah.
Jeremy Blanchett's chart. He was taking it as having been accurate, I guess, to some degree. But when he goes to the 19th, again, he's sees that as being a rare conjunction. And then when he goes to the 21st of 2033, again, another rare conjunction. So he was just tracking that, whether those dates are accurate or not. I mean,
I'd have to look into that alignment on 21st and 2033. I use Starry Night Pro 6. I always go for very exacting alignments when I'm studying this kind of stuff. I'd have to look into that one.
all right.
But yeah, I'll have to get back to you on that. But
Oh,
yeah, I
that's
know what you
fine.
mean about conjunction patterns.
Okay, no worries. So
That's what I
let's move
specialize in.
on with your model that you're kind of
Oh
following,
yeah, yeah. Let
if
me
you don't
just
mind.
yeah, just share the screen again. Uh, right, so we're back on to let's have a look here. Right, so yeah, right. So yeah, that was the connection to the solar flare event.
Right.
The connection there, the 3.6 ratio, 18 over 5. And that's what makes me, suspect that when Atlas 3I gets to its closest approach to the sun, which is about 2 days ago, so it's 2 days from now, that it's like energetically, it reminds me very much of what happened with that solar flare. It's like a prime setup for another solar flare to happen on that date. But let's have a look at earthquakes because there's something similar. So we're looking here at the USGS, US Geological Survey, and this slide a few weeks ago. I did this. This was the five most powerful earthquakes to have occurred this year. So from 1st of January 2025 to it were a few weeks ago. These are the top five, right? And you can see them on screen as like white blobs. And the one I want to draw your attention to is this 7.51. Southern Drake Passage. All the others, the other four, are in the northern hemisphere. It's this now, it's this little turquoisey blob thing here. That's the one in question, okay, that we're going to analyze here. So there we go. So this is what I want to draw your attention to. Just like I mentioned that it would appear that there's something significant about the closest approach of Atlas 3I to the Sun, 29th of October, 2 days from now. 3rd of November, 5 hours 56 minutes is when it gets its closest approach to Venus, which is this straight line. But as I've pointed out, at the same time as it gets its closest approach to Venus at this time, if you note the distance between Atlas 3 and the Earth, right, it's this value here. It's 209.6 million miles, right? We've got a special ratio connection, 0.288, connecting these two distances. So Venus distance is important. So is the Earth's distance to Atlas 3I at the time, 3rd of November. So here's the thing. If we continue on then, let's move this here. When that 7.5 magnitude earthquake occurred, it occurred August 22nd, 216, yeah? And the distance between Atlas and the Sun is this distance here, 262.03 million miles. It's very accurate. So if we've got that distance there, and we note this future time, yeah? 3rd of November, just a few days away, Atlas 3I to the Earth, that distance is this value here in yellow. So what we're going to do then is a simple division sum, and here's what we get. The answer, practically dead on, 0.8, or the basic ratio, 4 over 5. Yeah, extreme accuracy once again. And it tells me that the distance of separation between Atlas and the Sun at the time of that earthquake, yeah, was very significant. And if you take that distance and you say, okay, I'm going to divide that by 5 and then I'll get a fundamental unit measure, which is significant as a wavelength measure. You multiply it by 4, you will get the distance between Atlas 3I and the Earth that is yet to come, that will arrive or will be achieved on 3rd of November. And again, it makes me think, energetic stimulation, could that trigger an earthquake? Could it occur on 3rd of November? It's that kind of, just like with King and Bravo I was talking about, these are the energetic relations that are so suggestive. And then the final one is the CME event. So this is the one that we're all just talking about previously. So if you look at the spaceweatherlive.com website again, they give these charts for latest CME events. And so you can see here velocity of them in particular, maximum velocity, and you can see the time. And if we just scroll down on this same chart, this here is the one that everyone was talking about, hitting Atlas 3I. It occurred 21st of October 2025 at 20 hours 24 minutes, right? And it has this maximum velocity of 2016. Yeah, this one here. If you again just look at the values, yeah, I think these in velocity, the what is it, kilometers per second, I believe. But it's like the biggest velocity one of this entire chart at the time. So this is why it was so significant. And I'll just show you. You see the timestamp then, 2024. You've got one view on the left, and it's the timestamp at the bottom is 2012. The very next frame, because they're going intervals of 12 minutes, and you can see the eruption occurring here, just on the top right of the sun. So that's the 2024 one. So this is basically the timing of it, yeah? So if we look at that applet thing, yeah, you will note then that, again, 21st of October, we just happen to have this alignment between Atlas 3I, Sun and the Earth that was going on when this CME occurred, okay? So let's have a look here. So the first thing I just want to draw your attention to then is this. Just as a little aside. 3rd of November, just a few days away or so, yeah. So we're on like 27th October, it's like a week away, yeah. When Atlas 3I gets to its closest approach to Venus, the distance between them is about 0.649, right? And that's astronomical units. So that's just the first thing. Obviously, we're on 27th of October recording this. So it was slightly greater. But if we go back to the time of when that CME event occurred, 21st of October, right? If you actually plug in, say, the dates here, 21st of October, and you look at the steps of minutes, Atlas 3I and Venus, you can work out the distance separating the two bodies when the CME event occurred. And it remarkably turns out that the answer, if you look here in red, is this central column here. We've got the timing, 21st of October 2024, look across, and here 0.99490, the central column. So in other words, amazingly enough, at the time that the CME event occurred, the distance separating Atlas 3I and Venus is almost dead on the mean distance between the Earth and the Sun, okay? But just under 1 AU. This got me thinking, all curious like, because the Earth's mean distance is 1 AU, the Earth has a slight elliptical orbit, so sometimes it's a bit higher, sometimes it's a bit lower. So I basically looked at the separation between Atlas 3I, sorry, between the Sun and the Earth at this exact same time, this 2024 timestamp for 21st of October, just to see what the actual distance is between the Earth and the Sun. So here you go for geocentric, Sun, same timestamp, and then you get this. If you look here then, same time, 2024, and look here, the distance separating the Sun and the Earth is 0.995378, okay? So to summarize, this is what you get diagrammatically speaking. Coronal mass ejection occurred at this timestamp. At the same time as it occurred then we've got this conjunction, very accurate, between the Earth, the Sun, and Atlas 3I here. The distance between Earth and the Sun is this in value here, 0.99538 AU. And the distance between Venus and Atlas 3I is this distance here. and they're almost identical. So remember, we talk about wavelengths matching and how, even though they're not all part of the same alignment as such, they exist at the same time. And so, what I thought, what is the error rate here then? If we were to just go back in time, this red value here, when would this red value match the blue value? Okay, because the Earth is only very slightly altered, because of its orbit, but this value gets significant changes. So, what I did then was, going back to the Venus table, this reveals the error rate. 21st of October 2024 in red, that's when we had the separation of Venus and Atlas 3I in here, 0.99490. If you go back in time 15 minutes exactly to just 2009, then the distance separating Atlas 3I and Venus is this one, 0.99537, which is the match to the Earth's separation from the Sun. So the error rate would appear to be 15 minutes of time from perfection. But just to get a little bit more interesting, one final point is this. Like I was talking about, just for solar flares, how we have this start of the activity, and then the event occurs, the big main flash for solar flares occurs after a delay. In this case here, for the X2.7, the actual delay is 15 minutes between the start and the maximum. It differs for different ones though. It's 5 minutes for the X2, for the 1.9 it's 13 minutes, and it's 14 minutes for 1.5. But it got me thinking about, because there are connections between solar flares and CME events, and they can be quite subtle. So I had a look to see if there was any solar activity occur, like a flare type activity occurring just close to when the CME event occurred on the same date. And this is what you see here. 21st of October 2025. And look at this here. If you look at the bottom, it might be a bit small, but it says 2000 hours, yeah? And if you just go up here, there's this orange little blip. It spikes up here, okay? And if you look firstly, the solar activity is classed as B 9.95. That's the strength of it, yeah? And that is exactly, and it's very small, so I'll read it out. It's 20:04, 20 hours, 4 minutes. And then if you go one further, it now gets into orange. It's C 1.15. This is 20:05. 1 minute again, 1.16. That's 20:06. And then it drops 20:07. It's down 1.12. So the peak of this little model, the most accurate peak here is 20:06, when we had this spike of solar activity. Now, if there's a connection between that and then the CME event, okay, let's just go back to that table again. The most accurate match between the two distance values, Atlas 3I to Venus and the Sun to the Earth, occurred on 2009 at that time period in blue. 3 minutes earlier, 20:06, is that distance there, but it's 20:06 when that solar activity first started. So again, what I'm trying to get at here, guys, is the precision involved in how accurate these distance measures are in being associated timing-wise with sudden activity, either an increase in solar activity or, something that precedes a CME event or an earthquake. The precision modeling here is quite extreme. This is why, just a final slide here is just this one here. This is why, based upon these connections between Atlas 3I and a CME event, a solar flare event, and an earthquake event, and the ratios I've shown you of significance that exist from those events to these distances here, right? The distance associated with those events are tied into these distance values here, yet to be achieved, but that will be achieved in the next few days. And those special ratios that connect them make me think that energetically these could be prime dates for solar flares, CMEs, or earthquakes on either of these dates. And
Right.
so that's basically
So,
the presentation right there. That's it.
okay, well,
Yeah.
yeah, and that's great. I mean, in terms of a prediction, you are using these distances and what is in essence, you sort of refer to them as scalar waves, right? Generating scalar waves.
Yeah.
And
I do
so,
think, yeah,
go ahead.
yeah, I do think that, when it comes down to Atlas 3i, I'm talking about it scanning the planets. I don't think it's using standard electromagnetic waves. I think it's using, like what Thomas Bearden describes in his book. If you take electromagnetic waves and interfere them out of phase 180 degrees, you essentially enfold the electric and magnetic components to create a different kind of wave, which may travel at the speed of light, but can also travel much faster. But you're still dealing with waves of peaks and troughs, energies, frequencies, etc. And I do think that these are the waves which are interacting with the planets and causing a resonant stimulation. I don't think they're the standard EM waves. But as I said, I think that they are tied in, that these distance units here, they're special distances, and that if you
Right.
divide them by whole numbers, you get subunits of harmonics, if you will, and that they can connect up multiple, different distances from these different things, yeah? And that's what makes me think the mathematics of it is highly suggestive that they will be used to trigger, activity on either of these two dates.
Okay, so with that in mind, just to extrapolate a bit, is to say, are we talking about, again, from my point of view, I see it also as, you may see it as an experiment, but I see that not only is the experiment and the experimenter are all in the same vicinity,
Mm.
but they're also having a dialogue of sorts as a result of these positions and can continue tracking positions. And they are purposeful. And it does seem to be involving the sun, getting like, literally a rise out of the sun of either an activation, a flare, or literally a CME. And so it's interesting if you were and I don't know whether you go want to go down that road or you do go down that road, but from my point of view, I like to find out whether I like to look at it from the point of view of the secret space program because those are the witnesses that I've talked to, and they're always looking to see whether something is coming at them in a positive way or negative way, and trying to predict its activities and so on and so forth, and figuring out in the military sense of the word what's an enemy and what's a friend type thing, right? So, in terms of this experiment, in terms of how it's activating certain places, that could be, yes, you could be triggering it to get a reaction and then figure that out, with your data, what that means later. But it could also be purposely going through a trajectory where it is actually stimulating planets in a kind of a larger sense than anyone's figured out so far as to what it might mean if you trigger something on the sun now, or in December, and you do it in July, and you do it at Venus, or you do it at Jupiter, or wherever you do it. In other words, again, those trajectories and points can communicate, intention, for example. It could it could mean that it could be a test. Like, let's say you go to a doctor and the doctor like takes one of those hammers and they hammer your elbow and then they hammer your knee and then they hammer, and maybe even the sequence at which they hammer your, knee joints or whatever is important, not just the fact that they're hammering them. So it's kind of interesting in that sense. I mean, I think that people need to be thinking about this in a larger sense because this, is clearly an AI, is an artificial intelligence or some kind of intelligence has created this craft, has given a trajectory and sent it on its way, whether it's still occupied or not. Now, have you heard that I guess the stuff of Avi Loeb, who seems to me to be incredibly naive and to be purposefully that way, or maybe not so purposely. Maybe he is naive, or maybe he's just under orders to act naive, because he says stupid stuff, in my view, about not knowing the things that we really do have control over and the things that we do, the weaponry and the so on and so forth. So have you heard that it's supposed to be, I think is 28 miles across? Have you heard that?
Yeah, is it 46 kilometers or 28 miles across? Yeah. Yeah,
And
yeah.
then also, I have said, because of my work with Captain Mark Richards, that it sounds to me as though, because it has these rings, it has these structures, and it's not just fog or ice crystals or something stupid like that. It's actually a construction of protective covering, and it does appear that it could be a Dyson sphere, okay, surrounded by a Dyson sphere that would make sure that it's protected from attacks, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing about it. I mean, these kinds of distances, like 28 miles or whatever, they do suggest something massive, and it makes me think massive because it's like one gigantic power plant at its heart, and it's encasing
Right.
that, and that's necessary for it to be emitting whatever it's emitting, that it needs massive power reserves. So I'd agree with that. Um, Regarding, I mean, whether it's hostile or not, well, it's one of them things, isn't it? If you had something that was hostile and wanted to take us out, harm us in some way by deliberate CME event, you'd think that if it's got a craft that could fly, really fast, like a UFO, blink of an eye,
Right.
you'd have thought that it would have come into our solar system really quickly, got where it needed to go to the sun, stimulate it, and then it'd trigger the
Sure.
CME and we'd be able to do nothing about it. The fact that it just is on this orbit this trajectory that's going so long and taking ages to get to certain points, this is again makes me think that it's not directly hostile, or there's no urgency in doing anything to harm us. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because
Yeah,
if
I
it
agree with
wanted to, it
you.
could
Yeah.
have done that straight away. As far as that Abbey Loeb guy goes, yeah, I've seen a few things from him, and yeah, he's one of these orthodox. He's an Harvard guy, isn't he? So he's an orthodox guy, and they always have to like just they can't go like woo woo like us, you know what I mean? They've got their tenure to protect, and all that stuff.
Right.
They've got to be careful what they're saying. So yeah, he's got his like scale when he talks about 1 to 10 on something being like, yes, it's aliens versus no, it's like completely natural or whatever. But I think
Well, I mean, okay, let
yeah.
me interrupt you for this moment, because you see, there's a thought that it could even be summoned. Okay, I know this is a little more outside, but
Yeah.
the idea that it's indicators early on, especially, that David Sereda, showed the points of where it was going to go, is basically relating to our past, having to do with the Anunnaki, Egypt, Sumerian. In other words, these points at which that some of which seem like religious oriented. Okay, it suggests that it had this trajectory for a very long time and understood how it related to Earth. So if the Earth is in, just hypothetically, some
Mhm.
kind of danger from the sun, even, or from other aspects of the solar system itself, the age of the planets, their rotations, or if there was coming in the future some event that was going to interrupt our solar system in such a way, this could be the tracking prior to that. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think I do. I mean, this is what I say that for me, it could very well be that it's in our solar system on a mission that lasts several years, and it's wanting to remain in our solar system and monitor it because we're going to go through certain, Earth changes, and not just on the Earth, but solar system-wide changes. It's changes in maybe the energy states of the sun, etc. And
Right.
these things are triggered quite dramatically by special rare alignment patterns, like, I'd have to bring up a few slides here and show you some of the images of some of these dates, but that there are certain alignments, future, one in 2030, one in 2037, one in 2046, and I have got very, very precise reasons why I think that those dates and the alignments on those dates are quite crucial because I look at past alignments of destruction with precision and say, well, if you've got a
Right.
four-body alignment with an eclipse occurring, which triggered this disaster that we know
Right.
about,
Mhm.
and then we get another four-body alignment lined at the same area of sky with another eclipse nearby, you're thinking, yeah, that might be something. It's that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's we'll see. Obviously, maybe if there's anything significant on these two
Maybe
dates
we will.
here.
Yes.
I
Okay. Well,
mean, yeah.
what it seems, at least, taking your information, which is, I think, also coming at it from a little different angle than other people are, because you're measuring this, I don't know what you say, the plans of setting off a nuke at a certain place, a certain time, the triangulation for the earthquakes and CMEs, and so how that relates. I think that everyone has already noticed there's a correlation between this three-eye atlas, where it is at any given moment, and CMEs or solar flares or earthquakes.
Mm.
I mean, people are tracking that. So I'm sure that an AI could track that very well. Do you ever use AIs in your work?
I've looked at certain things. Um, well, I'm looking at certain things for programming. I might be, but I've got various things I'm doing right now. I don't use AI in any big way. I mean, I've been
All
looking at
right.
certain programming things, like with Python, for example, and getting some distances between planets for a certain study. But it's back burner stuff. I'm doing several things at once here.
Okay.
Um, but you know, it is what it is.
All right. Well,
But yeah.
I appreciate you coming on the show
Mm.
and sharing, your data, and responding to my questions, which I know is not like easy to respond. There's lots of areas of conjecture, and
Oh yeah.
there's, prediction also involved, that if you're tracking something, if you want to go on where it's going to go next and how it's going to affect us and our solar system, then it's worthwhile to follow.
Mm.
Any parting words for the audience?
Um, well, let's just see if anything happens on these dates. But I suppose if you want to know more about my work, I've actually got, yeah, let me show you this here. That's my website, Lost Stage Secrets. It's loststagesecrets.com. Um, and the books, which if you do want to know more about them, Lost Stage of Cosmic Harmony on the left-hand side here, that deals with reconstruction of the ideal solar system, 360 days per year. The rest of it deals with special units of measure. And the other one here, Ancient Megaliths, Covert Military Bases and Nuclear Weapons, that goes into more of what I've discussed about, when I gave the examples of King and Bravo, they're like in that book. They give you an indication of the physics involved on some of the secret bases as well and how it all ties together there. So both of them two books if you want to know more. But again, people can browse my website in general because there's articles on there that explain something about what those books contain. But that's pretty much it. And stop the sharing there. But yeah, as far as that, the dates I've put down third, actually, the 3rd of November closest approach to Venus, and also 29th of October, about 2 days from now. They are speculative, but the mathematics of those connections mean that those distances between Atlas 3I and the Earth and Atlas 3I and the Sun on those dates, they have those ratio connections tying into solar flares, earthquakes, CMEs, as I've demonstrated. And that's what makes me think there could be something on those dates. It's so speculative, I admit, but we'll either know or not in the next few days, literally. Because the timing of the events should be registered in things like USGS or solar flare. You know what I mean? They should, if anything does happen, it should correspond quite accurately to the those times. But we'll have to see.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Keith, and we'll stay in touch. How can people reach you if they wanted to send you an email, or is there a place to
Um,
on your
yeah,
website?
if you go to my website, lostagesecrets.com, um, and there's a contact button.
All
You
right.
can press that. My email address is like listed there if you wanted to contact me there, yeah.
Okay. Very good. All right. It's fascinating, I have to say, and I appreciate your input.
Right, okay.
Take care. Okay. Thanks
Right,
for watching, everyone. I'm going to run the credits, so you can just, jump off.
right,
Okay.
okay.
Thanks a lot.